Welcome to Stribling's New York. I am your host, Rob Taub, on WORAM Radio 710 on your digital dial. Stribling's New York is a show about business, culture, people. We have a wide range of guests from authors, producers, actors, artists, restaurateurs, as well, of course, as people from the world of real estate who will educate you about New York City and buying, selling, renting homes, apartments, investment properties. Today, our first guest is a world-renowned author and my friend, Jon Land. He has written so many books, many bestsellers. My favorites are the Caitlin Strong series about a female Texas Ranger, which hopefully one day will become a new TV series or feature film. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you for having me, Rob. When are we going to be joined by that world-renowned author you were talking about?
I thought that was you.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Okay, world-renowned. Well, that's a new one.
Well,
but you know what? I just love hearing it. You know, and it's good to hear somebody saying that.
Well, I have reviewed many of your books for Huffington Post, which is an international publication, and you've been on the front page of the book section many, many times, and I've given you rave stellar reviews. And we both use Twitter quite frequently. In fact, we were all on Twitter last week with Meltzer and Coben, and it was a pretty funny Twitter thread that unraveled there.
It was, and Harlan's got a brand new book out, Fool Me Once, which is fantastic. Brad has a book coming out in June, and he's a great friend and also one of the best writers out there today, one of the great storytellers out there today. So we don't see each other a lot, so Twitter's the next best thing. It
really is. I talk about it all the time. A lot of the guests on the show I have met through Twitter, and we have great interviews, and I've made some great friendships. And in fact, I don't know if you know, I know you know Lee Child. Somebody's written a book, a guy named Andy Martin, who's a listener now of the show and has read some of my work, and he contacted me via Twitter after he read my interview with Lee. And he's written a book called Reacher Said Nothing about Lee Child's working process and how he puts a book together. And Andy is a professor at Cambridge and in England, not at Cambridge and Boston. I believe he's a professor of French literature. So we'll meet all these smart people.
I think you've made it when somebody writes about you, when somebody's writing about your process, when someone's writing about what you do, you transcend, and this is where Lee Child and I think where Harlan Coben are. They're in that stratosphere of what I would call celebrity authors. But in the case of Harlan and Lee, it's deserved because they are fantastic writers, and they're even better storytellers.
They really are great storytellers. I mean, we've also had Robert Crace on the show, Alex Berenson, but there is these, and I don't know who sold the most books. I mean, Nelson DeMille hasn't been on yet, but he's somebody that I've interviewed numerous times. But Coben has really just catapulted, and so has Lee Child, to another level. How does that happen?
That's a great point because they've done it different ways. Harlan had great success with his series character, Myron Bolitar, but it never got him the kind of recognition and fame and notoriety that his standalones have gotten him, where he's basically invented the genre of the suburban nightmare novel. Something happening not around the world but next door. On the other hand, Lee created an iconic character almost from the get-go when The Killing Floor won the Edgar Award, the first book to feature Reacher. And he never got away from Reacher. I think he's done 21, 19 now, something like that. And every book has featured Reacher. So his path to the number one slot on the New York Times bestseller list has been different than Harlan's in that he's stuck with it, whereas Harlan has bounced around. And I think Harlan has also had great success with his young adult series, where he's gone back to Myron Bolitar, his series character, but Myron Bolitar as a much younger man, to introduce an entirely new audience to his work. And I think Lee has also, by the way, done that with Reacher. So we may have hit on a trend where not only do you create an iconic hero like Jack Reacher, like Myron Bolitar, but then when they become truly iconic, you give us the true origin stories of what they were doing when they were 15, 14, 16, 17 years old. What was their boyhood like? How do they become the heroes that they are today?
Yeah, Crace did that with Joe Pike in L.A. Requiem, and I think that just made Pike into a really iconic character in that way, because before that he was kind of this tight-lipped guy who barely said anything, and now I know that Lee and Robert Crace have sat on the same panel together, and people actually, I talked to Bob about this on the show, people will say, who would win a fight? And they're very serious, between Reacher and Joe Pike.
Oh, my God.
And there's huge debates about this. Now, to change gears really quickly, though, when we're talking about authors, I had a great discussion with Nelson when I interviewed him at the convention that you helped run, the International Thriller Writers Convention. I did an interview with him about Homeland Security and his book at that time, but what we also discussed that didn't make it into the story was his thought is writing has gotten much better and people are reading more, because in the 1960s and 70s there was a lot of really mediocre writing that was filled with a lot of sex, because back then, I mean, you could barely utter an obscenity even in a movie. There was very little nudity. There wasn't the internet. Television, you still had TV shows where married couples were sleeping in separate beds. And now suddenly you have pretty racy stuff comparatively to back then on television, let alone in movies. So people don't turn to novels for their cheap thrills, and they expect and demand more intellectual fare, even in a thriller or a mystery.
That's actually, I have never thought of that, because you're talking about books like Harold Robbins, which peaked in the 1950s.
Yes, I was going to mention Harold Robbins. I didn't want to trash him, but that's pretty much what Nelson was getting at.
I got to tell you, and I'm gonna come at this. You're 100% right, but I got to come at this a slightly different way.
Please do,
because I think Harold Robbins, for all the sex and all the the stuff that as a kid I can remember buying books like Naked Came the Stranger and paging through them looking for the dirty parts. What was page 46 of The Godfather that has the sex scene with Sonny, and the bridesmaid.
Yes, and Lucy.
That everybody used to read. But here's what I want to get at. Harold Robbins wrote some great books. The Carpetbaggers, the Dream Merchants, the Adventurers. That trilogy were great stories. Also from that era, I think from my genre, from the thriller genre, you had Alistair MacLean, you had John D. MacDonald, you had Ian Fleming at the top of their games. Those three authors, as much as any, are responsible for the form of the thriller as it developed and has evolved until today. You can make the argument that Travis McGee was the first of the Jack Reacher types, the loner hero living on his own. Now, of course, Reacher is so unique we can't compare him to anybody. But Travis McGee is the forerunner of Reacher and Myron Bolitar and Will Robbie, and
Elvis Cole.
Great cat. Alex, and this is the thing. The difference with Crace is that he's done something that, to my knowledge, nobody else has done. And that is take a sidekick. Take Hawk from Spencer. Take Cleet Purcell from Dave Roby's show, and made him a hero in his own standalone series, both alone and also then Elvis Cole does his little cameos. None of the other authors, and the amazing thing about Reacher, by the way, Myron Bolitar, Harlan Coburn's character, has Win, the millionaire playboy killer.
Yes, actually, who I shouldn't like, but I can't. I'm kind of obsessed with him, and I like
Bond,
him. Yeah.
Even Bond Rob had Felix Leiter.
Yeah.
Jack Reacher, and here's the amazing thing about
Jack Reacher has no one.
No, Jack Reacher has nobody. I think there's only one.
Well, he's the size of two men.
Yeah, what was that?
He's the size of two men, so I guess he's his own sidekick.
And in that sense, there was Joseph Campbell has a great theory about these kind of characters, the kind of characters we're talking about today. He called them, in one of his studies of myth and structure, he called them the savior psychopath, the violent man, the man unable to live among men, who, for a shining moment, does the right thing. Now, I think the savior psychopath that Campbell was writing about, the Dirty Harry kind of character, which Clint Eastwood made famous in movies, the Reacher kind of character, they actually have better hearts than Campbell was talking about. But what Reacher represents, to the greatest degree of any character out there today, is the American Western, the frontier hero, the man, the gunfighter on his own. And for my money, the Reacher books that open at random, the latest one, Make Me, where it all starts because he gets off a train, curious about how a town named Mother's Rest got its name. That's the only reason he gets off the train, to find out the origins of Mother's Rest.
I did the same thing once with Scarsdale, but nothing exciting happened to me.
What did you find when you got off?
I found a synagogue and a Whole Foods, and I spent the day there davening and eating bagels. Jon, this has been a great hit that you did with us, and we have to tell Lee and Harlan Coben and Brad Meltzer and Robert Crace that I think they owe you some royalties should the book sales increase on any of their smash novels. And what have you got out right now before you leave us, so we know what to buy on at Barnes & Noble or Amazon or wherever we get our books?
Well, my Jack Reacher character is a woman, a female Texas Ranger named Caitlin Strong. Her latest adventure is Strong Light of Day, and she's a blast. I would love to see her and Reacher meet someday. That would be a hell of a compliment.
My choice, when they eventually make the television series, I don't know, I've heard rumors that Jennifer Garner is interested in this, and now that since you and I know one another so well, I'm expecting to get on the set. Not that I'm really interested in the show itself. I just want to meet Jennifer. No, it's a great series, and as you know, I've reviewed it. If you go to my website, robtaub.com, and look at the Huffington Post icon, Jon's books are in there. Almost all of them I've covered. So, Jon, thanks for joining us. We'll have you back again soon.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Bye.
Bye.